What's going on, live? Let me fix up my hat real quick and shit. Like, hand smoke and shit. All right, cool. So out here, beautiful sunlight, nature and shit in my yard and stuff, in front of my house. Um, when you enter the chat, click the like, click the share, subscribe, enjoy the contact or enjoy the content. Check out my channel for the content and let's talk about it. Right? This title is called "Debunking the Arguments About Assassin's Creed Shadow." Now, the genuine in general argument about it being woke, I can see it from that angle. Where now you want to take a where the fan base were asking for a Japanese setting of Assassin's Creed that takes place in Japan, and they want a Japanese protagonist. Now, I understand the argument being that you wanted to see a Japanese protagonist in the game, and they featured a black samurai by the name of, or as what you guys call, y'all are saying he's not a real samurai, he's just a retainer, he was just a servant, blah, 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 blah. The thing is, even though there's literature from the Chronicles of Nobunaga, a book, talking about who Yasuke was and what he's about, and if you look up what a retainer was according to Japanese culture, it was basically a samurai. You wore samurai armor. You carried around weapons and that and such. Um, and none of you know if he was really a servant either. You don't know if he was a samurai. You don't know if he was a servant. So if the logic is he was a mysterious character, nobody really knows about him, then you can't say that he was a samurai, and you also cannot say he was a servant. Nobody really knows. Um, One of the arguments that is made centered around now, so that no mind you, the general idea that woke culture and them trying to push wokeism down people's face by adding the black protagonist, even though there's an Asian female protagonist, but part of woke is now they want to put female leads or different cultures of characters where they don't belong and push that on other people's culture. Well, to debunk that argument, what about Dolph Lundgren in what you call, I forgot the movie he was in, Red Alert or Red something, where Dolph Lundgren was a white male protagonist. I think it was called something in Little Tokyo, Trouble in Little Tokyo. And he was the main protagonist in that show, in that movie that came out, I think, in the 80s or the 90s. Nobody had an issue with Dolph Lundgren being the male protagonist, this blonde-headed, blue-eyed white male, being the protagonist in a Japanese movie set in Japan. I think he starred with Brandon Lee. Nobody had an issue with that, right? Um, and the context is that Yasuke is an actual historical figure that took place during a historical time. And I understand it from the Asian community, especially the Japanese community. You want to see more Japanese male represent your game or represent your movies. Well, we've had a ton of Japanese male or Chinese male or Asian men that were protagonists in movies, video games, and that such. But I understand that the fan base was asking for a Japanese game with Japanese protagonists, even though there's a Japanese female protagonist in there. But okay. One of the other arguments is that how would you guys like if they made an African Assassin's Creed and made a white male protagonist the star of that game? Well, guess what? You guys have already been doing that. Chris Helmsworth was a white male mercenary that was the protagonist in the first extraction in India. You had countless of white male protagonists that were the main heroes of a lot of video games and a lot of movies. In a lot of movies, whether they be historical or made up, in the past, and yet nobody complained about it. Nobody complained about Tom Cruise in The Last Samurai. Nobody complained about Keanu Reeves in the 47 Ronin, even though Keanu Reeves' character was a created character for the 47 Ronin. The 47 Ronin was actually a historical event, but Keanu Reeves' character was made up. It didn't exist. Nobody could complain about these things. Nobody complained about Scott Adkins and Ninja Warrior. And the Japanese culture, y'all like to say that you don't allow outsiders to learn your culture or learn any of your ways or your samurai ways. But you've allowed white men to star in a lot of your movies and media, being the main protagonist of your culture, leading your culture. So if your argument is how would we like it if it was a white protagonist or Asian protagonist in a African dominated game, or in a game where it was supposed to be made up of predominantly black, that already exists. That already exists. Go back throughout the 80s and 90s. Look at all your movies. Look at the movies about America with Native Americans. Look about movies about the Caribbean. Look about movies about look about movies about Africa. Look up movies about Asia or India. It's always a white male protagonist that's being the main lead of these games or movies in these cultures, and it was never an issue. It was never called cultural appropriation. It was never called um, what if you put this white male in this culture where he didn't belong. That already exists. So that debunks the argument of what if we put an African Assassin's Creed or an African game or a black game and we put a white male protagonist in it. Those material are already out there. So what you guys are trying to do is you're trying to gaslight and pretend like these movies with white male protagonists never existed when they do. So to debunk that argument, let's tackle the argument about historical accuracy. The prior Assassin's Creed, one of their disclaimers is that even though these are historical events, the people created are not historical. They're fiction. Nobody was talking about historical accuracy when you had a fucking Viking fighting mystical gods and Minotaur in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Or an Italian named Ezio Auditore assassinating Caesar Borgia or have anything to do with Caesar Borgia or Rome or the Pope. I wasn't talking about historical accuracy then. Right? With any of the Assassin's Creed games, with any of the games that Ubisoft has ever made, where a white male is a dominant male protagonist, historical accuracy was never the complaint. Right. So I'm debunking that. Because y'all wasn't complaining about historical accuracy with any of these games. It was a white male protagonist and y'all was cool with it. You never complained about it. The second one I want to debunk is damn, it was on my brain and I lost it. It was on my brain and I lost it. Cultural appropriation. to the Asian community, especially Japanese, Chinese, or whatever, Korean. I seem that y'all love to culture appropriate black culture, like you culture appropriate dancehall reggae with Jamaicans, you culture appropriate hip hop with Black Americans, you culturally appropriate a lot of stuff that black culture has done, and you'll copycat that and innovate it and add it to yourself, and you won't give any respect or pay homage to the culture which you culture appropriated from. So now to put that on black folks and say, how would we feel if black folks was imposing us onto their culture, and that's disrespectful. But you guys have been very disrespectful towards black folks and our culture by that logic. And I see a lot of black folks who I'm starting to begin are shills on the internet making that dumbass argument, saying that, oh, how it's now fair that you're imposing black culture onto Japanese culture or Asian culture when they've been doing that onto black culture. They've been doing it with hip hop. They've been doing it with dancehall reggae. Them Asian men love going to Jamaica, into the Caribbean. Right? White men, you can't talk about cultural appropriation because, like I said earlier, white men have been the forefront of pushing your white maleness or masculinity onto everybody else's culture, making yourself the main protagonist or the main character of a lot of different movies and cultures. Look at the recent one of the recent ones with Chris Helmsworth in Extraction One when he was a mercenary in India. And he gets the Indian girl. So white men, you can't talk about being woke. You can't be talking about cultural appropriation and how people culturally appropriating your culture when you've been doing this all throughout Hollywood. There's movie clips, which I'm going to do a live stream about that later on, they show you white men playing as Asian or Chinese characters. That's called cultural appropriation. Where white folks have won Academy Awards playing Asian characters. So the fact that y'all putting that on black men and saying that black men we're culture appropriating or culturally appropriating Asian culture and is disrespectful to them, how about everybody being disrespectful to black culture and culture appropriating us? Especially when it comes to black men. So I'm gonna talk about it, right? Um, for years in the gaming industry, because I'm 32 years old, I've been gaming since I don't know, since I've been 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Played Super Nintendo. What's going on, Braxton? Been playing Super Nintendo, been playing GameCube, been playing all kind of games. Most of these games that we've played, you've always seen a white male protagonist. So this is to the American audience now, and to American gamers. Most of the heroes of these stories that we've played, myself has played, many of you black men who are going to watch this later on have played, it's always been a white male hero that's the protagonist of that game, and he's always the hero, and he always gets that culture of women, whether it be Asian, black, or white. We've seen that. Grand Theft Auto 1 up until San Andreas, and then after San Andreas. Halo 1 up until Infinite. Or the Halo series. What you call it? Drop some games in the chat. What they always had for the 2 people watching me, click the like, subscribe, and share me out. Drop a series of games in the chat. What's going on? I'm doing good. Drop a series of games in the chat where it always had a white male protagonist in it. And I don't remember anybody saying that these games like Mass Effect, like Halo, like Grand Theft Auto, Like, damn, there's a lot of games I should know that I should know and remember. Um, damn, I forget. Skyrim. Um, which else? Battlefield, Call of Duty. Um, what else? Uh, Mech Assault. Plenty of games out there where it's the white male protagonist, and nobody ever talked about that being cultural appropriation. As soon as you see a black male, matter of fact, nobody ever talked about being historically accurate with any of the games in the past. But now, when it comes to them putting a black samurai in there, which none of us know if he was a slave or a samurai. But let's say if he was a samurai for real, right? Japanese culture, you've accepted white men being able to be samurai, and you were cool with it. But as soon as they put a black one up there, now everybody's having an issue. And now people are saying that Ubisoft Japan, there's a bunch of dislikes under the comment section. How you know that's not from the white American audience? You know what I'm saying? I'm not even saying it's the white American audience in general. I'm talking to I'm talking to them too. But more specifically, I'm talking to the ones that still has those racist mindsets in their brain. And I'm talking to even the black folks. And even though I agree that black men should not be used as the face of woke to push our culture onto other people's culture and be disrespectful to their culture. But at the same time, they was never respectful of ours. Our culture has always been culturally appropriated, imitated, copied, mimicked, especially if you go back into the 80s of Hollywood or the 60s of Hollywood, where it was big business to destroy the black man's image. Nobody was talking about how they are destroying the black man's image. Nobody talks about how the Asians love to mimic black men or culturally appropriate our music, our style, our image, or any of that. Because guess what? There's dancehall reggae in Indonesia. There's dancehall reggae in Vietnam. There's dancehall reggae in China. There's dancehall reggae in Japan. There's dancehall reggae in Korea. Go look these things up. There's hip hop in Japan. There's hip hop in China. There's hip hop in Korea. Both these things started by black men. So I'm only attacking these arguments made around the game. You see what I'm saying? I'm only attacking the general audience, like the Japanese audience, and the white American audience, or the American audience, period. Even a lot of the black guys on YouTube, because there's a lot of the black guys that disagree with this too, and I understand where they're coming from. But a lot of the arguments, or how to substantiate the arguments, it's not, even though I agree with it, but the problem with the arguments is that they're neglecting to remember that you have an industry that always had made the white male antagonists impose on other people's culture. For example, aside from that, look at Jackie Chan, look at Jet Li. You see what I'm saying? They're shown and played themselves into black movies. Like look at Rumble in the Bronx. That's a movie by Jackie Chan. He going into the Bronx and fighting Latin folks and black folks in the Bronx. You see what I'm saying? Or Jet Li fighting black folks, or Jet Li Fearless, and what's the Jet Li one he did with DMX? And Jet Li did a movie with DMX and Aaliyah. Was that Asian men culturally appropriating black movies, or inserting themselves into black culture right there? Because Jet Li and Jackie Chan have always been a strong male Asian role. And we never disagree. Black men never had an issue with them. We've embraced Asian culture. We've embraced a lot of the kung fu movies. A lot of black men were inspired to do martial arts because of Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and Jet Li and all the other stuff and studying kung fu. So at least for black men, or you look at RZA. You know what I'm saying? Look at RZA, and I forgot the name group. I can't believe I forget their name. Shame on me. Um, the Wu-Tang Clan. So RZA and black men and hip hop, or within the movies, have always paid homage and respect to Asian culture. But Asian culture have never respected and paid homage to black culture. So, um, if you go look up Shogun, right? Shogun is a series that that models after The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. So Shogun is supposed to be a series move version of Last Samurai. So again, you showcased a series on FX in 2024 with a white male as a protagonist helping out the Japanese in their city and in that time frame during, I guess, the 1600s, and nobody had an issue with that. Nobody complained. Nobody talked about how is this white guy being culturally appropriating Japanese culture. This is not historically accurate. Look at Shogun is a perfect example because it's modern day. Shogun is supposed to take after Last Samurai. And nobody complained about that character being historically inaccurate. Nobody was arguing over if he was a samurai or not in Shogun. And I think that white guy in the movie in that series Shogun takes somewhat of the same path as Yasuke, whereas in Yasuke was supposed to be a bodyguard to an Italian Jesuit. I think John Blackthorne in Shogun, he was actually going to Japan to convert those people in Japan, and he was following a Portuguese Jesuit, I believe. So y'all would accept this white guy that was originally coming to Japan to conquer or sow dissension. In that, nobody's complaining about that being woke, cultural appropriation, any of that. But you're complaining about it with Yasuke. So if you was okay with Shogun and The Last Samurai, how could you not accept Yasuke? And I guess their counter argument to that is that the fan base have been asking for a Japanese Assassin's Creed with Japanese protagonists, but one of the protagonists is a woman. But I could still understand it from the Japanese men saying they wanted a Japanese male. And just because they want a Japanese male lead does not mean that they hate women. They just wanted a Japanese male lead. So I guess if Yasuke was a servant, which none of you can prove that Yasuke was a servant of samurai, but a lot of y'all are saying that, Yasuke, he should have been just a servant because he was just fetching water and helping him drink tea, fetching his tea. That's what y'all are saying. You can't prove if he was a servant. You can't prove if he was a samurai. But you rather pick him being a servant and fetching Nobunaga's tea. And you saying that he retreated. You know the reason why at the last event when Nobunaga took his life or performed seppuku, do you know why Yasuke fled? It's because he took Nobunaga's head, preventing Nobunaga's general from taking his head and showcasing it as a show of power that he claimed victory. That was the reason why Yasuke ran or retreated from that event. So it wasn't that Yasuke ran as a punk. He did it as a tactical retreat so that Mitsuhide, which was one of Nobunaga's generals, could not claim victory. See what I'm saying? So it's a lot of goofiness. Um, Now, my thoughts and opinions. My real thoughts and opinions. Right. Objectively looking at the game, um, objectively looking at the game, right? Ubisoft should have never went with this move because now it puts black men into a situation. It disrespects Japanese culture. Um, because they're taking a character that we don't know anything about, and then now we're giving him attributes that may or may not be true. And then now it's a disrespect to black men, because instead of us getting our own game now, where it stars in where it's an African Assassin's Creed, and you get to see strong black men form a brotherhood to fight against the European powers. Now you're putting a black guy that nobody really knows about into a time period, even though he was a historical person in a historical time frame. You're putting a black guy that nobody really knows about, and then now you're not giving Japanese men a chance to shine, even though Japanese men have been in countless movies in the 80s and the 90s where they have shined. If it was not for Eddie Murphy, black men, I don't think we would have gotten a proper image of us. If it was not for Eddie Murphy, go check out Eddie Murphy and Wesley Snipes and a lot of other brothers during the 80s and 90s that made movies putting black men in a very masculine role. You know what I'm saying? But because of this game now that Ubisoft drops, it's still like a sidestep to tell black men's real story, because it doesn't show, it shows a Japanese story of one black person that, even though he was a historical person, we don't know who or what, where or why he was. It's all speculation. You see what I'm saying? I would rather that Assassin's Creed took the time and intelligence to make an African Assassin's Creed that showcased black men forming a brotherhood to fight against European colonialism and slavery in Africa. And then make a part two Assassin's Creed talking about how the Caribbean black men fought against European colonial slavery, like with the Haitian Revolution and how the Jamaicans and the Maroons fought in Jamaica. And then make a part three Assassin's Creed talking about how the black Americans had to fight against slavery. And then do a kind of like a story about how black men would go from island to island trying to free slaves. I would rather have seen that than having to see a black samurai in a game where we don't know if he was a samurai or not, even though he's a historical character, and but we don't know who he was. And on top of that, even though there's a Japanese protagonist there, she's a female. Which, me personally, I'd rather see a male. And I'm not saying this because I hate women. I'm saying this because I'd rather see a male dominating that culture and being the leader of that culture. And now that Ubisoft took this move, and I guess they were trying to use black men's image to sell this game. You could have just made a game, took the most masculine Asian character you can find, and make a Japanese Assassin's Creed. Instead of now trying to go woke. Because that's what the optics look like. It looked like it's going woke. You put a female lead there, and you put a black male lead there. Even though the black male is more historical than the Asian shinobi, or Kanochi, which he's supposed to be a Kanochi, not a shinobi. Which technically, she's really a samurai still. You see what I'm saying? The ninja or Kanochi were really samurai that didn't have the bulky samurai armor. They were just stealthy. You see what I'm saying? But this whole thing is just goofy to me, to be honest with you. Um, The fact that everybody was cool with white men culturally appropriating everybody's culture, um, and pushing their white masculinity on everybody else, so nobody argued or complained, or if there was a backlash or argument, it was very small. But as soon as you put a black face up there, it's a big 911 emergency. Like, I've never seen so much hate for black men. I'm gonna call it hate for black men. Maybe it's seeing a black dude with an Asian chick. Maybe the white men are simping over Asian women that it's not even theirs. I'm gonna go out there and say it. Maybe a lot of the white men are upset, and I'm gonna say it about the Asian. Maybe y'all are upset because y'all see a black dude with an Asian chick up there. Because we can talk about it from that angle, which would be crazy because, like I said, Asian men love going to the Caribbean, love going to Jamaica and Trinidad and Haiti, and swimming in nothing but black Caribbean box. There's nothing about half Jamaican and half Chinese and half Jamaican and half Trinidadian walking around a place in the Caribbean. So if you guys are upset about a black guy with an Asian chick now, y'all are fucking ridiculous. That's got to be the most ridiculous thing. Especially from white men. And white men have been able to go across this globe, to and fro, conquer everybody's culture, and mate with everybody's women. And create biracial mixed kids. But that's another video. That is another video I'm going to talk about. But anyway, this is Kishari Gaming Nation. Thank you for those of you who said, thank you to Braxton for coming in and saying what's up in the chat. Thank you for those of you guys that came in. Click the like, click the share, and subscribe to my channel. I'm out.